name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
Hi, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
And we're hosting a show right here on GB News, 9:30am till 12pm, every single weekday, called To The Point.
We're going to be talking about all the big issues that matter to you at home in Britain.
Absolutely, whether it's holding politicians to account, discussing what's taking place in the channel, banging on about law and order, we're not afraid to do the absolute lot of it.
Yes, and if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we'll be saying it.
Make sure you're here 9:30am till 12pm, every single weekday, right here on GB News for To The Point. Good morning, everybody. You're watching To The Point here on GB News with me, Patrick Christie's, and Mercy Moroki. We're here all the way through until midday with a show stacked full of all those top stories, the biggest discussions, and, of course, everything designed to get you going.
Yes, so make sure you get in touch with us with your views, as usual, on gbviews@gbnews.uk. The email there on the screen, and we'll be reading your views out throughout the show, as usual. But first, it's time for the latest news with Rosie.
Good morning, I'm Rosie Wright. Let's get you up to date. The Prime Minister is welcoming world leaders to COP26 today, telling them humanity has long since run down the clock on climate change. During his speech, Boris Johnson will say they must act now to tackle the climate crisis. Around 120 heads of state and government are attending the summit. An investigation is underway this morning after a collision between two trains in Salisbury on Sunday evening. Network Rail say the incident happened when a train derailed after hitting an object, then colliding with a second train. British Transport Police confirmed there were no fatalities in the incident, but a small number of people were taken to hospital. The chief executive of Barclays Bank, Jes Staley, has announced he's stepping down after an investigation by the financial watchdog into his links with the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The Financial Conduct Authority report makes no findings that Mr Staley saw or was aware of any of Mr Epstein's alleged crimes. Mr Staley says he will contest the findings. If you've had 2 jabs of the COVID vaccine and they were over 6 months ago, as of today, you don't need an appointment for your booster jab. The 3rd injection is now being offered at walk-in vaccination sites. The NHS is aiming to increase jab uptake ahead of what they've described as a challenging few winter months. Families in Australia have been reunited as the first unrestricted flights have arrived in the country. Australia has eased its international border rules for the first time since the start of the pandemic. Australian citizens living abroad can now visit the country without the need of a permit, with quarantine rules also easing. Those living in Australia are also now free to leave without government permission. The new rules apply to permanent residents, Australian citizens and their immediate families. You're up to date here on GB News. I'll have more for you at 10 o'clock.
Yes, good morning, everybody. You're watching To The Point here on GB News with Mercy Muroki and me, Patrick Christys. We've got a big show lined up for you today to kickstart your week with all the topics that you really care about. So here's what's on the menu.
Yes, convicted terrorist Anjem Chowdhury has mocked the UK's de-radicalisation programme, saying it was a complete waste of time for him. We'll be speaking to de-radicalisation and security experts and asking, is it time to stop being soft on terror?
Yes, it is. Anyway, we're going to throw live to Glasgow as well this morning as leaders of the world meet north of the border for the latest talks on climate change action. We'll update you on what's going on today at COP26 and ask how you feel about it all, so get in touch.
Yes, also on the programme, former chairman of the Brexit Party and now leader of Reform UK joins us to talk about the French fishing row and his aim to send a powerful message to the Prime Minister by standing in an upcoming by-election against the Conservatives. Make sure you join us for that and get in touch with your views, as usual, on our email gbviews@gbnews.uk, and we'll read those out throughout the show. But first, Patrick gives his views on Britain being too soft on terror.
Yes, convicted hate preacher Anjem Chowdhury is currently being allowed to pump out radical filth online because our justice system is far too weak to deal with him properly. And now he's taking the mickey out of us as well. Chowdhury was sentenced to just 5.5 years due to his support for ISIS. A report actually concluded that Chowdhury had caused between 70 to 100 people to turn to terrorism, but due to a variety of different legal loopholes, he's managed to largely get away with it. The Commission for Countering Extremism concluded that these loopholes needed to be closed if we're to stop Chowdhury from striking again, and of course others like him. But the shocking thing here is that Sean Hipgrave, a director in the Office for Security and Counter-Terrorism, admitted that he was actually unaware of the Commission's recommendations until being directed to them by the Manchester Arena bombing inquiry on Tuesday. How on earth can this guy not know about the report? What hope do we have of stopping future attacks or getting in the way of radicalisation if a director of the Office for Security and Counter-Terrorism can't even be bothered to read a report telling him what needs to be done? Chowdhury wasn't just sentenced to prison. He was given a ban on public speaking. But this ban expired 3 months ago, and he's using a platform called Telegram to whip up social media storms, calling for things like the release of ISIS prisoners in Syria. He actually sends out press releases, and these are then viewed tens of thousands of times. So he's properly back at it, isn't he? And then on top of that, that's when revealed what we already know about our Prevent scheme, that it's a load of rubbish and a complete waste of time and money. Chowdhury was assigned a supposedly de-radicalised terrorist, get this, to talk to him in an attempt to get him to change his ways. But Chowdhury had this to say about the whole thing. We never talked about jihad or Sharia or anything like that. It was a complete waste of time. We just had small talk for 2 years. Great. So he's openly mocking us at this point, isn't he? Apparently, we're still monitoring Chowdhury and he's deemed to be a great concern. Well, not that great, is it? We haven't come up with a way to block him spreading extremism online and he's free to walk the streets. If he's saying that Prevent doesn't work, then surely he's admitting what we also already know, which is that he still holds the views that he held before. Well, those views were his support for ISIS, weren't they? Isn't that tantamount to him publicly saying that he still supports ISIS? Isn't that a crime? So why don't we do the world a favour, lock him up and throw away the key?
Yeah, I think one of the things, as you say, his ban on public speaking was lifted a couple of months ago, and one of the things he used his newfound freedom to say, which at the time I also did a monologue on, was, we know Afghanistan was, all the stuff with Afghanistan was going on a couple of months ago, and he said that actually the Taliban weren't being strong enough, that he wanted to see them being stronger, and he said that actually, if he could leave the UK, because I believe he's actually not legally allowed to travel anywhere, then he would go and sort of live in an Afghanistan under this newfound Taliban.
But that's a massive red flag, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it is, and the fact that, you know, as you say, he has been responsible for radicalising so many people. Indeed, I believe the guy who's just been arrested and charged with the murder of Sir David Amess, one of his friends said that some of the material he used to get radicalised was some of the speeches by Anjem Chowdhury. So clearly he is this figure that means so much and has caused so much damage already, most of which we'll never be able to calculate or know about. And the fact that he's just sort of walking around, he's able to continue spewing all this hate, and on top of that is basically admitting that the Prevent thing doesn't work at all. I mean, so many red flags, but I don't have faith in our justice system to actually deal with this kind of thing properly.
Yeah, look, I just can't believe this. I'd thought that maybe one of the reasons why we seemed just so stupidly slow at dealing with terrorists and it was stupidly weak about the whole thing was because actually it's just normal people who normally get attacked and die. It's people like you and me, it's just random people on the streets, and actually sometimes people in power just don't really care about that. But then what happened to Sir David Amess? You know, one of their own was, well, essentially, it looks as though anyway, wasn't it, killed by a terrorist? And so, well, hang on a minute then. Well, if we're still not acting now properly with things like sorting out prevent or locking up people who are spewing out hatred online, then actually, are we ever going to? And I just think, you know, how many more people have to die, really?
Yeah, indeed. Well, I'm sure our viewers at home have lots of views about this, so make sure you get in touch on GBViews at GBNews.uk and let us know what you think about the fact that one of the most sort of prolific hate preachers that we have had in this country is basically saying your de-radicalisation programme is a joke.
Yes, and loads of you have already been getting in touch. We'll just go to a couple of those quickly. GBViews at GBNews.uk. Chowdhury hates the Western world, but make sure that he and his family enjoy it as much as possible. Lots of people saying that basically, yes, Chowdhury should be in prison, and I think that's a pretty unanimous result. Just moving away from that as well, on a slightly more light-hearted tone, anyone who watched Tonight Live last night will have known that I had a face paint-related disaster that has resulted initially in fake blood not coming off my face, followed by quite an aggressive rash. And we've had a lot of you getting in touch about this. I'm pleased that you resolved all the blood in your face. Thank you very much. Actually, I essentially had to paint my face with makeup this morning. It's actually a real mess, that.
Yes, well, keep your views coming in. GBViews at GBNews.uk. And after the break, we'll be talking more about tackling extremism in the UK with Dr. Alan Mendoza from the Henry Jackson Society, and we'll be talking about a lot more as well, so stay tuned.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
Hi, I'm Patrick Christys.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
And we're hosting a show right here on GB News, 9:30am till 12pm, every single weekday, called To The Point.
We're going to be talking about all the big issues that matter to you at home in Britain.
Absolutely, whether it's holding politicians to account, discussing what's taking place in the Channel, banging on about law and order, we're not afraid to do the absolute lot of it.
Yes, and if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we'll be saying it.
Make sure you're here 9:30am till 12pm, every single weekday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
Now, as we've been discussing this morning, convicted terrorist Anjem Chowdhury has mocked attempts to reform him, calling the government's Prevent programme a waste of time. That's according to The Sun newspaper. The 54-year-old, whose ban on public speaking was recently lifted, also said the scheme to identify and de-radicalise extremists was wasting millions of pounds. Chowdhury was jailed for 5.5 years over his support for ISIS, and he said he was assigned a reformed jihadi who tried to steer him away from his extreme Islamist creed, but says that all they did was have small talk for 2 years.
Yes, it's quite concerning, all of that, isn't it? Well, Dr. Alan Mendoza is the founder and executive director of the Henry Jackson Society, which is a think tank that helps to combat extremism and advance democracy. Thank you very, very much. Is this just telling us what we already know, that prevent is a massive waste of time and money?
Well, I think it's a bit ridiculous to take Anjem Choudhury at his word on this basis. Clearly, Anjem Choudhury was never going to be de-radicalised by Prevent because he's radical to his core. And a programme like Prevent is not designed to deal with hard nuts like that. It's designed to pick off, kind of the lower hanging fruit in the setup. Now, the question, of course, is, well, what do you do about people like Choudhury? That's another question. But I don't think you can extrapolate that just because Choudhury says Prevent didn't work on him, that it hasn't worked on other people. There are many examples of Prevent having been successful and steered people away. But I think the obvious answer to all of this is that we have to intensify, not turn away from ideas of de-radicalisation, and have programmes stretching way earlier even into communities to make sure that radicalisation is stopped at source.
I know you say we shouldn't take him at his word, and I'd be inclined to agree to some extent. He's hardly a man of, great moral character. So I do see where you're coming from.
He's a criminal.
Well, yes, he's a convicted terrorist indeed. So, but at the same time, that's kind of what worries me in a sense. If you're saying actually it's not designed for people like him, he's almost the worst of the worst, he's radicalised his core, that is the problem, isn't it? That he's now able to be out and about on British streets, posting all sorts of things, trying to potentially radicalise other people, some would say, on this platform Telegram, and now saying that, the de-radicalisation is a joke. So that's a massive, massive issue that we need to address as well.
Well, yes, I think we have to obviously separate the two issues here, which is that someone who may well attempt to radicalise others again, being allowed to do that is one problem. The second problem is a programme of de-radicalisation of people who've already been radicalised. If you see what I mean, there are two separate problems we have to resolve here. I mean, clearly, the legislation around Choudhury's release was outdated. We know the government's changed legislation since then, which would mean that people like him, of course, spend longer time inside prison, as they should. But I suppose we have to also look at when people like this, the hardest nuts, come out, what can be done to stop them from spreading extremist material once more. And that, again, is a question the government urgently need to respond to, because if it is indeed true that the murderer of David Amos, was watching Anjem Choudhury's videos, and of course we don't know that for certain, but that's been mentioned by national media, then we have a real problem that even historic radicalisation of people like that is having an effect on contemporary crimes.
And indeed, the Commission for Countering Extremism basically said that there are numerous loopholes that Anjem Choudhury is very adept at exploiting. I believe he was trained as a solicitor and does certainly know his way around the law. And we need to close those loopholes. And yeah, actually, it turned out that the Manchester Arena bombing inquiry, a chap called Sean Hipgrave, who's director in the Office for Security and Counter-Terrorism, was unaware of this report, apparently. Is there just a lack of will, really, to do anything about this more than anything?
Well, I think you've hit on something really important here, actually, which is how serious are our politicians, our political leaders, about tackling this form of radicalisation, this form of extremism? There's been a report out, as you said, from the Countering Extremism Commission. There's an even longer in the tooth report called the Casey Review that had lots of recommendations about how you can improve integration in Britain's towns and cities and break up ghettoisation and segregation. But it appears that nobody is willing to pick this up and take this on as a major issue for government. And I think we have to ask the question, why not? And why is it the case that these reports get produced, these reviews get produced, they make good recommendations that are welcomed by government at the time and then not carried out? Is it because people are scared of touching this issue? Is it because they're worried about being called racist or something of that kind? I find that hard to believe, given the government is very keen on, the whole stopping the cancel culture movement. So it seems that this issue, for some reason, has been left on the sidelines, and it may require, of course, a tragic case like what happened to David Amos to bring it back front and centre to the political agenda, because it needs to be there.
And it does seem like a bit of an open goal to me, because I don't think there's anybody who would be sort of against cracking down better or more effectively on terrorists at all. So it does seem like an open goal for the Home Office. But, you know, you're from the Henry Jackson Society, of course. You do a lot of work around this and a lot of policy work on what is the best sort of action to take to tackle this kind of thing. So from your perspective, what should the government be doing going forward?
Well, the easiest thing to do would be to implement those reviews that have been painstakingly put together, that have been well researched, and which have not been implemented. So bring forth Casey, bring forth the Sarah Khan report, and make them happen, basically. Those are there already to be done. You don't need to reinvent the wheel to do it. Let's have some political action and move it forward. And you're right, it would be popular. I think that the key question to this is there needs to be polling done around what people think about extremism and what they think about terrorism. Now, as you can imagine, nobody's going to want extremism, terrorism to flourish. And if the government sees polls, I think, that support taking a tough line on this, it may well prompt action. I think you'll find that the action will be particularly resolute in the so-called red wall seats, because these are places that are often at the front lines of social cohesion issues. And we have a big agenda from the government about levelling up. Isn't it time that we look to level up those marginalised communities left behind, perhaps, in terms of integration with English, in terms of, you know, kind of what sort of law runs throughout their communities, and indeed the status of women? Surely we need to level up everyone in this country, and that includes taking a very tough look at integration and what's been going on in the Midlands and North in particular.
Thank you very much. Fantastic stuff, Dr. Alan Mendoza there. Cracking insights. Of course, he's the founder and executive director of the Henry Jackson Society, which is a think tank that helps to combat extremism and advocate democracy, which, let's be honest, we need at the moment. Loads of views coming in. Thank you very much. GB Views at gbnews.uk. This is... Keep your chin up, Paul, OK? What a sad and pathetic country we've become, walked all over by everyone, bow down, and apologies to everyone for everything, apologises to everyone for everything. I'm ashamed to be an Englishman, a once proud nation. Well, look, Paul, keep going. Come on. We are Great Britain, after all.
Do you know what? I'm not completely ashamed, but I'm on the road there, because whether it's to do with all the stuff we're seeing with COVID, whether it's the political classes blatantly ignoring anything and everything that the working classes have to say, despite the Conservatives and the government having won quite a strong mandate from those red wall seats that Alan mentioned there. And this green agenda that's also, again, completely ignoring what working class people have to say about it.
Or making them poorer.
Yeah, add to that cancel culture. I can see why so many people are quite exasperated at the way this country's going.
Yes, look, I can understand there are numerous different issues going on at play right now, but we can't give up, everybody. We have to have hope. Anyway, I've been banging on about Chowdhury and his vile cult for years. I've lost friends because of it. Gosh, I think you're well rid of them, to be honest with you, Steve. And been branded Islamophobic, far-right extremist and racist. This is an issue that we have now. If you want to come out and talk, bizarrely, we've wandered into a situation where if you want to talk about someone who's been convicted for hate preaching and subscribing to ISIS ideology...
Convicted under the Terrorism Act. Let's call it for what it is.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
You know, and basically has said that you'd quite happily go and live in Afghanistan under the Taliban, who he wants to have a more hardline approach. If you can't call that guy out, I'm sorry, then, you know, it's not a great place to be, is it, really?
Yeah, I think a lot of people do struggle to acknowledge the fact that you can actually criticise Muslims, people who, you know, subscribe to really hardline Islamist views. You can also criticise ethnic minorities without neither being sort of Islamophobic or racist. A lot of people struggle to comprehend that, and that's why I feel we've got to that place.
Yeah, I think if someone's, you know, openly calling for, you know, Sharia law on the streets of Britain and for essentially has been linked on numerous occasions to people who are now convicted for terrorism, I think they're exactly the kind of person you should be calling out, and I don't understand why so many people, usually at dinner parties in Islington, are too afraid to say so. But anyway, there we go. GB Views at gbnews.uk. We'll be back with more of today's top stories and plenty more views as well after the break.
Yes. First, let's give you the weather. Looking ahead to today's weather. Very unsettled to start the week with low pressure in the driving seat. Let's take a look at the details. There'll be plenty of showers heading into southwest England at lunchtime today. Some of these could be heavy with a risk of hail and thunder. Still windy as well for many areas. Coming eastwards, and the showers will become much more isolated with lots of blue skies and sunshine on offer despite that blustery southwesterly wind. Showers are likely in South Wales, again with some blustery and heavy downpours. Winds should have eased a little compared to earlier on. Not that much sunshine on offer though at lunchtime across the West Midlands. Indeed, we'll likely see some further rain, especially north of Birmingham, and we'll still have that strong west-southwest wind to deal with. Some rain affecting much of Yorkshire at lunchtime, but hopefully a drier and brighter picture across northeast England. However, it won't be feeling overly warm, especially in that strong gusty westerly wind, and much of central and eastern Scotland should be dry on Monday lunchtime, perhaps with a few glimmers of sunshine. Temperatures still in single figures for most and feeling quite cold. More persistent rain affecting northern Scotland as well, but it's a brighter showery picture for Northern Ireland. Still very windy, but a notch down on this morning's scales. Temperatures around 10 degrees Celsius. It will remain showery for many areas this afternoon and evening, with gales becoming confined to northern and eastern Scotland. And that's how the weather's shaping up for the rest of the day.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
Hi, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
And we're hosting a show right here on GB News, 9:30am till 12pm, every single weekday, called To The Point.
We're going to be talking about all the big issues that matter to you at home in Britain.
Absolutely, whether it's holding politicians to account, discussing what's taking place in the Channel, banging on about law and order, we're not afraid to do the absolute lot of it.
Yes, and if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we'll be saying it.
Make sure you're here 9:30am till 12pm, every single weekday, right here on GB News for To The Point. Good morning, everybody. You're watching To The Point here on GB News with me, Patrick Christie's, and Mercy Moroki. And we're here all the way through until midday, you lucky people. We've all got all the big stories, all the best discussion on all the top issues as well.
Yes, make sure you get in touch with your views as usual. gbviews@gbnews.uk. But first, let's give you some news with Rosie.
Good morning, I'm Rosie Wright. This is your news at 10 o'clock. The Prime Minister is welcoming world leaders to COP26 today, telling them humanity has long since run down the clock on climate change. During his speech, Boris Johnson will say they must act now to tackle the climate crisis. Around 120 heads of state and government are attending the summit, including US President Joe Biden, European leaders and India's Narendra Modi. They're under pressure to curb global warming to 1.5 degrees. Penny Pizer is from Net Zero Watch, which highlights how climate change policies affect society. And he told GB News the summit won't make any difference.
This is the 26th climate summit. So over the last 30 years, we've heard the same kind of slogans. It's always, last chance saloon. It's the last chance, the last minute, global disaster. It has always been that way. And I think the public are beginning to realize that this is not going to happen.
The Prince of Wales is going to give a military-inspired speech at the conference. He's expected to stress the urgency of action, calling for the world to be on a warlike footing. He's also going to ask leaders to engage with global business, saying a vast military-style campaign would utilise their strengths. Well, the royal commentator and former Transport Minister Norman Baker told GB News the Prince also could look at his own behaviour. A small number of people have been taken to hospital after a collision between two trains in Salisbury on Sunday evening. Network Rail says the incident happened when a train derailed after hitting an object, then colliding with a second train. British Transport Police confirmed there were no fatalities in the incident and approximately 100 people were evacuated from the scene. The chief executive of Barclays Bank is stepping down from his role after an investigation by the financial watchdog into his links with the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Barclays said they were made aware of some of the information into the investigation and were disappointed, but they didn't provide details. The Financial Conduct Authority report makes no findings that Mr Staley saw or was aware of any of Mr Epstein's alleged crimes. Well, he said he's going to contest the findings. A former soldier who lost his life in a paddleboarding accident in West Wales has been named. Father of three, Paul O'Dwyer, died after jumping in to save two women in distress while he was out paddleboarding with a group. Two women also died at the scene and another remains in critical condition. Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison has denied claims made by the French President Emmanuel Macron that he'd lied to him over the cancellation of a submarine building contract. Australia scrapped a submarine deal with France worth $60 billion as part of a new security alliance with the United States and Britain. The deal will give Australia access to new security measures and nuclear-powered submarines. The French president said Scott Morrison had betrayed France and indicated that more needs to be done to rebuild trust between the two allies.
I have a lot of respect and a lot of friendship for your people. I just say when we have respect, you have to be true and you have to behave in line and consistently with this value.
You think he lied to you?
I don't think. I know.
If you've had 2 jabs of the COVID vaccine and they were over 6 months ago, as of today, you don't need an appointment for your booster injection. The 3rd jab is now being offered at walk-in vaccination sites. The NHS is aiming to increase jab uptake ahead of what they've described as challenging winter months ahead. NHS England say that more than 6 million people in the UK have already had their booster jab. Families in Australia have been reunited after months of travel restrictions as the first unrestricted flights have arrived in the country. Australia has eased its international border rules for the first time since the start of the pandemic. Australian citizens living abroad can now visit the country without the need of a permit, with quarantine restrictions also eased. Well, those living in the country are also now free to leave without government permission. All of these new rules apply to permanent residents, Australian citizens and their immediate families. You're up to date here on GB News. I'll be back with the latest headlines for you at 10:30. But for now, back to Patrick and Mercy.
Good morning, everyone. You're watching To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Moroki, and Patrick Christie's. We've got a show full of all of today's big stories and lots of discussion and opinion on the issues you care about. So here's what's on the menu today.
Yes, well, despite the strikes and the storms, COP26 is now well underway in Glasgow. We'll be bringing you the latest developments and highlights, if there are any indeed, from this climate summit throughout the morning.
Yes, and the fishing row with France continues to rage as Macron digs his heels in. The Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, has given the French government a 48-hour deadline to resolve the fishing dispute before legal action is taken. We'll be speaking about that very shortly.
War with France. No, OK, fair enough. No. And what do we make of the smoking tax hike? Is it fair or are smokers being unfairly penalised? We'll have all that coming up and much more across the programme. And you can get in touch as well with your views. gbviews@gbnews.uk. But first, Mercy gives her views on the end of Black History Month.
Happy November the 1st, everyone. Also known as the day where virtue signalling corporations and public institutions can put their Black History Month memorabilia back in the stock cupboard for another 11 months. Black people have had 31 days in October for dedicated events, exhibitions and exposure. Bosses have got a month of patting themselves on the back, and we can all go back to the perpetual nothingness of arguing about race and diversity that characterises the other 11 months of the year. Now, on a serious note, I, of course, am unreservedly in favour of teaching the many interesting contributions people of African heritage have made to Western society, to science in particular. It's not all about Edison and Newton. Of course, I want to hear about the amazing things black people have achieved, like the black person who invented CCTV or the microphone or the 3-light traffic system, the gas mask, the blood bank, and the first doctor to perform open heart surgery. But what is black history anyway, and how can an entire ethnicity's history be condensed into a month? I can't shake the fact that it all just feels a bit tokenistic, if you ask me. In the words of Morgan Freeman, who once said in an interview he finds Black History Month ridiculous, which month is White History Month exactly? Oh yeah, that's right, there is no such thing as white history because that would be ridiculous. Asked by the interviewer, well, how are we going to get rid of racism then in the absence of a dedicated month to celebrate black people? Morgan Freeman replied, just stop talking about it. I'll stop calling you a white man and you stop calling me a black man. Now, of course, this is somewhat of an oversimplification, I'll concede that, but the Equalities Minister, Kemi Badenoch, attempted to make a similar point in an interview yesterday and got criticism for it. She said, Black History Month has become Racism History Month, which is what it shouldn't be. And it has essentially become a month where we teach about the transatlantic slave trade, colonialism, as if that's all being black entails. Black History Month makes me feel like a footnote, like an afterthought. If I go on to do great things, or if any of my children go on to do great things, things that change the course of human history, which, if I have it my way, they will, I really hope our achievements will not be relegated to a month. Black History Month is over, and it's sad to say, but I'm kind of relieved.
Yes, strong stuff, great points, I thought, and I always find it interesting as well whenever I go into my... So I was in Sainsbury's, near where I live, right, and there's these massive banners up behind the screen there about Black History Month, we're celebrating Black History Month. You just stuck some banners up. That's all it is. There's nothing else as far as I can see whatsoever that's there. Yeah. It's just kind of virtue signalling.
I think that there are a lot of people who say, oh, you want to ban Black History Month. You don't want us to celebrate or learn about the achievements of black people in history. That's the purpose of Black History Month, of course. But that's completely... I'm making the opposite point. Actually, mine is a more progressive approach, I think, is that my point is, how about we just integrate it into history in general, you know, and see it as, if it's black British people, see it as British history. That's my point. And why do we need to say, oh, well, you have a month to celebrate your history, and for the rest of the 11 months of the year, we won't really bother.
Yeah, but also, not be funny, why don't we have, like, we've got a huge Chinese community in this country. Why don't we have Chinese History Month? Something like that. But our Nana made a great point, our very own Nana made a fantastic point, I thought, which is, why does black history seem to start with the slave trade? And she kind of went on to say, well, actually, in a sense, we're all black because we're the cradle of civilization, the cradle of humanity, and therefore, you know, why don't we start with real black history there, as it were, as opposed to just seem to start with that kind of stuff? Because I think it perpetuates two things, in my opinion. A, that, well, basically, that kind of all white people are to blame for things that happen, and also, as well, that's a massively defining feature about black history. Now, yeah, OK, it's massive, of course it is, and it was undoubtedly a terrible thing, but there's so much more to black history than that.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing I always mention is that, yes, obviously, you have the transatlantic slave trade, which is, you know, black people were taken from Africa and transported across the Atlantic over to America, but actually that was a proportion of Africa. It wasn't every single, you know, black nation in Africa. And from where I'm from, East Africa, it was the Arab slave trade, for example. And every time we're talking about slavery, we almost only talk about the transatlantic slave trade, forgetting that actually slavery, you know, white people didn't invent slavery. Slavery has been a core part of humanity and society for as long as humanity has been going on. So I just find it very reductive. You're reducing what you see, your version of black history, to a month, and you're reducing my identity almost to a particular set of historical events that my ancestors probably had nothing to do with because I'm not from that part of the world. It's all very bizarre. All I'm saying is, look, Black History Month, it's very simplistic. If you're going to talk about Black history, teach it properly, integrate it into, you know, I'm all for integrating it better into education. Just don't reduce it to a month.
I agree with all of that. I think I did also want to look at you while you were talking then, but I started and realised that the blood on my face from Tonight Live last night is starting to reappear. So it looks like I'm going to have to sit like this for a very long time until someone brings me my makeup. Anyway, so look, we've had loads of people get in touch about this. Why are we differentiating between colours? Why does it matter what colour you are? The moment you differentiate, you are racist. End of. That's from Victor. There's quite a bit of this going about at the minute. GB Views, gbnews.uk, get in touch. But moving away, one of the biggest stories this morning is, of course, the start of COP26 climate conference in Glasgow. Delegates from around 200 countries have descended onto the city to announce how they will cut emissions by 2030 and help save the planet. The conference got off to a shaky start, with protesters and storms disrupting travel to the event. Trees blocked railway lines and dozens swarmed Glasgow Central Station to catch a glimpse of conference reject Greta Thunberg.
Yes, well, GB News have got all our eyes over this conference with our political correspondent Tom Harwood reporting from the inside, and David Donaldson, our Scotland reporter, covering the atmosphere in Glasgow. So let's catch up with them. Let's start with you, Tom. Fill us in on what's been going on and what we can expect for the rest of the day.
Well, since 8 a.m, world leaders have started to arrive here at the SEC Hydro in Glasgow, and Boris Johnson has been meeting and greeting them as they all trundle in. That sort of welcome lasts for quite a bit of time, but Boris is going to speak at midday, and what he is going to really try and do is set the political direction for this conference. There are going to be lots of intricate, detailed negotiations over these 2 weeks, but it's really these first 2 days that matter politically. After that, many of the world leaders actually pack up and leave, at least potentially until maybe the last day when something might be agreed. But really setting that broad political direction is key. How much of this is going to be pre-prepared, packaged announcements, and how much of this is actually going to be some hard, thrashed negotiations, some new negotiation to bind some of those big polluting countries into the same sort of commitments that the UK has been delivering upon. No doubt Boris Johnson will cite that oft-quoted figure of how much the UK has reduced its CO2 emissions since 1990, more than any G7 country, more than any G20 country. But as we can see now, world leaders have been greeting the Prime Minister, and they'll be seeing if they can be charmed by him, and indeed many of the other delegates and dignitaries at this event, to see if a new global agreement can be reached, something that will put flesh on the bones of the Paris Agreement. Paris was another COP, a COP 5 COPs ago, that agreed a framework to move forward to keep warming below 2 degrees and preferably 1.5 degrees centigrade. Well, this COP is all about trying to keep 1.5 alive, trying to be more ambitious, go further, but also deliver specific commitments as to how that will be achieved, because currently many countries have signed up to say that of course they'll get their CO2 emissions down, they just haven't said how they'll do it. So this is about putting that flesh on those bones. Will it be a success? Well, it's already been beset by several problems. Currently, there's a horde of people trying to get in. The queues don't seem to be particularly well managed. And of course, the entire transport infrastructure of this country seemed to be in meltdown yesterday, with trains not only being disrupted by falling trees, but even a train crash and some trains being turned around back down to London. Many people who wanted to take an eco-friendly way to this conference have had to fly here instead. Not the best start to a climate summit.
No, indeed not. And we're actually going to go... thank you very much for that, Tom, by the way. Fantastic stuff. We're just going to go over now to David. David, I wanted to get your idea of what it's like boots on the ground-wise, right? Because we are hearing that there's the bin collections are not taking place. There's been protests. There's been all sorts of things going on. Is it a particularly inviting atmosphere for these COP delegates at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the bin protests, collections are not going to happen this week in Glasgow. That came late last night. The GMB said that the members hadn't enough time to consider the offer fully. So therefore they've decided to go out and strike this week, and obviously comes at the worst possible time for COP26, and delegates probably seeing Glasgow in a poor light, although I have alluded to it before in some of the reports that certainly to say the city just needs a spruce up, well really I think that's absolutely shocking really, because it certainly needs much more than that. And outlying areas of Glasgow, maybe perhaps the areas that the delegates won't see, certainly need more than a spruce up, that's for sure. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be protest as well. I was in one in Edinburgh yesterday. I have to say that was Extinction Rebellion at the Scottish Parliament, and I have to say that passed off very, very peacefully indeed. However, there's a whole pile of other ones happening today. Red Rebel train, that's the Extinction Rebellion, is going to join Red Rebel Brigade. They're on a train coming from the southwest of England. I'm going to meet them off that train, so I would imagine that would be pretty raucous and certainly a noisy protest. There's no doubt about that. Later on in the week, of course, there's a Greenwash March at 12 o'clock on Wednesday. We continue Fridays for Future March at 11 o'clock on Friday, and then the big one on Saturday. We're expecting 100,000 protesters. So that's going to be difficult for the police here to manage. 10,000 officers per day out in the streets. They've come from all over the UK. They've been drafted in to try and help make sure that this passes off peacefully. Whether it does or not remains to be seen.
Yes, David, thank you very much. David, reporting, of course, from COP26, and Tom as well, who stuck around. Thank you very much, both of you, for getting in touch. Right, for getting in touch, for doing your jobs. Anyway, so we're going to go. Cheers for calling in, guys. But yeah, GBviews at gbnews.uk is that inbox, and we're going to go into the inbox now. Lots of reaction to Mercy's monologue about Black History Month. And yeah, there must be a whole load of Black history dating back to ancient times that is so interesting and inspiring, and yet all we get is the slavery part, and it's all about racism. That's from Della, and there's a lot of that, really. Basically, everyone agrees with you.
That's fantastic. Well, I love to hear that.
Well, I think it's interesting. We are going to be talking throughout as well, like we just did there, about COP26. But I think it's worth just asking you, really, are you willing to pay the amount of money that it's probably going to end up costing you, whether that's, tens of thousands for an electric car, all right, you might get some subsidies on your heat pumps, just all the little things that you're going to have to do in your life, including just massive amounts of tax. Are you actually willing to pay for that? Do you care about the environment and this planet enough? Because actually, I think it's fair to say a lot of people don't, and a lot of people would also say, well, you definitely should, because otherwise we'll all die. So where are you on that? GBnews.uk.
I think it was interesting. Mark Carney, former governor of the Bank of England, sent out a tweet over the weekend in which he says it's time for our financial system to be entirely based around the green agenda. And it was that word, but it was entirely, absolutely, whatever he said. And I just thought, our financial system should not be entirely focused around the green agenda when there's, people literally starving to death across the world, for one. And in this country, in particular, there are people who are incredibly poor, who remain incredibly poor in one of the richest countries in the world. And actually, later on, we'll be speaking about some social housing issues people are facing, where councils are taking days, if not weeks, to actually sort out basic issues, including plumbing. So stay with us for that. So let us know what you think. GBviews at gbnews.uk. And after the break, tensions across the Channel are heating up as the fishing row with France intensifies. We'll be covering the Foreign Secretary's comments and talking about the deadline she's given Macron in just a moment. But first, the weather.
Yes, it's time to put my meteorology degree to the test, isn't it? It's going to be very unsettled to start the week, apparently, with low pressure in the driving seat. Let's take a look at the details. There'll be plenty of showers heading into southwest England at lunchtime today. Some of these could be heavy, with the risk of hail and thunder. Still windy for many areas. Coming eastwards, and the showers will become much more isolated, with lots of blue skies and sunshine on offer, despite that blustery southwesterly wind. Showers are likely in South Wales again, with some blustery and heavy downpours. Winds should have eased a little compared to earlier on. Not that much sunshine on offer at lunchtime across the West Midlands. Indeed, we'll likely see some further rain, especially north of Birmingham, and we'll still have that strong west-southwest wind to deal with. Some rain affecting much of Yorkshire this lunchtime, but hopefully a drier and brighter picture across north-east England. However, it won't be feeling overly warm, especially in that strong, gusty westerly wind. Much of central and eastern Scotland should be dry on Monday lunchtime, perhaps with a few glimmers of sunshine. Temperatures still in single figures for most and feeling quite cold. More persistent rain is affecting northern Scotland, but it's a brighter, showery picture for Northern Ireland. Still very windy, but a notch down on this morning's gales. Temperatures around 10 degrees Celsius. It will remain showery for many areas this afternoon and evening, with gales becoming confined to northern and eastern Scotland. And that is how the weather is shaping up for you for the rest of the day. You're welcome.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
Hi, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
And we're hosting a show right here on GB News, 9:30 a.m. till 12 p.m. every single weekday, called To The Point.
We're going to be talking about all the big issues that matter to you at home in Britain.
Absolutely, whether it's holding politicians to account, discussing what's taking place in the Channel, banging on about law and order, we're not afraid to do the absolute lot of it.
Yes, and if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we'll be saying it.
Make sure you're here 9:30 a.m. till 12 p.m. every single weekday, right here on GB News for To The Point. Morning, everyone. Now, President Macron and Prime Minister Johnson are once again at loggerheads over fishermen's rights in the Channel. The tension continues to rise between the two nations, with neither side appearing to want to make the first move of reconciliation. Threats from the French of power cuts to the Channel Islands and banning UK fishermen from French ports hang in the air.
Yes, we're now joined by Richard Tice, leader of Reform UK and former chairman of Brexit Party, who's recently launched his parliamentary career campaign for the old Bexley and Sidcup by-election. Thank you for joining us this morning. Let's start with the fishing war. It's quite a mess, isn't it? And it seems that tensions are escalating. This is exactly the sort of thing people wanted to avoid when they were voting for Brexit.
A very good morning to you both. And yes, I've got in my hands a book beautifully entitled 1,000 Years of Annoying the French. And it seems to me that we clearly have somehow annoyed the French president and his colleagues. The truth is, we all know, this is about electioneering for the presidential election next year. Macron needs to appear tough. But what he's doing with this fishing row, be under no illusions, together with the appalling letter written by the French Prime Minister to the EU Commission. It's a straightforward breach of the withdrawal agreement. It's a breach of the Trading Cooperation Agreement. And the Prime Minister and Lord Frost, they need to, I think it's now time to hold them to account and to say that enough's enough. We're not going to be bullied. We're not going to be threatened. No. And frankly, there's a very simple solution to this. And that is that we should say, because you're in breach, we're going to pause any more of the payments that were agreed under the withdrawal agreement, what were called the divorce payments, which, just to remind your viewers, is billions of pounds every single year for the next few years. So let's just pause those, and then that'll give them a clear understanding that we're not going to be messed around. And I think that Lord Frost should give them a very short deadline before we invoke Article 16 in regard to the Northern Ireland negotiations. And then, frankly, the EU know we mean business.
Yes, OK, I agree. I mean, I look at what's happening here now as well, and I think, well, hang on a minute. Wasn't this Brexit deal really shaped and crafted over by a Frenchman called Michel Barnier? So surely if Emmanuel Macron wants to punish the person responsible, he should cut Barnier's power off and blockade his house.
Look, I mean, the whole thing is, we know what they're doing. They're playing games. I think I'm right in saying that actually Macron's, his own poll ratings have improved since he's been insisting on these silly games. And, two can play games, but, we don't want to play his silly game. We just want what's fair and right. And the truth is about fishing ground, actually, we've been granting a huge number of licenses. I think I understand some 98% of those that have been applied for. And those that haven't been approved, as I understand, is frankly because they can't prove any evidence that they ever fished in our waters, which is the basic rule that's required. And that probably means, frankly, they're trying to take the mick.
I think a lot of people will be concerned, just to give the other side of it a little bit, that, OK, all right, well, if we do, invoke Article 16 or whatever, if we do withhold payments, then I suppose there could be more consequences down the line. Would that not really kickstart a massive kind of soft war with France, as it were, especially in a trade sense? Do we actually really need that?
Well, I mean, let's be clear. We're not going to be bullied and threatened and messed around. We're a proud, sovereign, independent nation. And, the truth is, these are supposed to be our allies. It's not very friendly to threaten to cut off electricity to the Channel Islands. It's not very friendly to illegally impound a law-abiding fishing vessel. So of course it's not Plan A, but equally we're not going to be pushed around. And sometimes things have to get a little bit worse before they get better. And maybe, for example, here's another thing we could do. Apart from stopping the payments to the EU, the divorce payments, we could also actually suggest to lots of the haulage companies, people that export, maybe we should use different ports apart from French ports. Maybe we should use Antwerp and Rotterdam. Because actually money talks, it always talks. And the French hate it if all of a sudden they realise that actually we can take our goods and we can export and import through other ports, excluding Calais and Dunkirk and the like.
Well, let's hope it does get better eventually, even if it has to get worse in the immediate term. But let's move on to another issue, which I'm sure you'd love to talk to us about this morning. You've announced your plan to run in the by-election caused, of course, by the sad death of Conservative MP James Brokenshire, who died of lung cancer last month. And Labour's Daniel Francis and the Conservatives' Louis French are confirmed candidates so far as well. I believe you've said you want to send a strong message to the Prime Minister and the Cabinet. So tell us what you mean by that.
Yes, so I've been canvassing over the last 2 days on the doorsteps, which I love doing, and we're asking voters to send a clear message that actually people don't want con-socialism. People want lower taxes, voters want cheaper energy and zero waiting lists. And that's the clear message that I'm discussing. And what's coming back very loud and clear is that people are really, really concerned about the higher energy bills. We're only at the foothills of the net zero cost mountain that is facing everybody. And people don't want to. People are actually rather like their boilers that work rather well. People don't want heat pumps that don't work and are noisy and are inefficient and don't heat the water in the radiators as warm as boilers do. And this message is coming through loud and clear. And I hope that voters will send that message to Westminster. And that's what I think this by-election will be all about. And I'm looking forward to engaging with the other candidates.
And we all want that. I think everybody wants to pay, lower taxes. And we don't all want to change our lives drastically. We're going to have to sort of pay for it. The question on many people's lips who might want to vote for you is, how are you going to pay for it?
Look, it's very simple. We've got to grow our way out of this crisis. You can't tax your way out of it. The Tories tried that in the early 2010 years. It was called austerity Mark I. It didn't work. We had very low growth rates. And they're now trying to impose austerity Mark II. It's absurd. They haven't learned the lessons. But if you cut taxes hard for the lowest paid and for small businesses, you'll get greater circulation through the economy of money. you stimulate growth. Faster growth means higher tax revenues in the medium term. So essentially, you're investing in the short term. The government's balance sheet can easily absorb a stimulus to the economy, and that's how we get growth. At the moment, we're facing, under the Chancellor's budget, we're facing the highest taxes for 70 years in this country and the lowest growth forecasts for 60 years. That's not a recipe for growth. It's not a recipe for medium and long-term recovery. It's a recipe for austerity Mark II, and it's totally unnecessary. It's completely the wrong approach.
This whole green agenda thing has actually really opened up another avenue for people such as yourself, hasn't it? Or was the Brexit thing initially, and now actually I think people, when they do start feeling the pinch in their pockets, will start questioning whether or not this particular approach is worthwhile, especially considering if China and Russia don't play ball, which they won't, there's not much chance of us getting anywhere near now.
And just before you go, I believe I heard through the grapevine that one of the things you want to see is a referendum on the green agenda. Is that true?
Yeah. That's absolutely right. I think, this is a life-changing proposal, this whole net zero stuff, where, we'd have to change the way we heat our homes, which cars we drive. They want us to change what we eat, how we operate, whether or not we fly and travel as much. Look, all of those, let's have a debate about that. These are life-changing things. Actually, to be honest, much more life-changing than Brexit. So let's have a national debate. Let's have a simple question. And then actually let's have a vote on it. And I'd be delighted to be involved in leading an alternative proposal which is much smarter, so that, yes, we want to have cleaner air and reduce emissions in a sensible, affordable, proportionate way, but we don't be legged over by the likes of China that are going to keep building coal-fired power stations while we virtue signal and hair shirt ourselves to impoverishment.
Well, there you go. Richard Tighe, thank you very much, as always. And initially talking about what's going on in the Channel, and then obviously veering away to the latest by-election where he intends to give the Tories a bit of a bloody nose. Thank you very much, Richard. Now, many Greater and Southern Western Railway services are cancelled this morning after two trains collided near Salisbury last night. Well, our reporter Paul Hawkins is there for us, I believe. Paul, thank you very much. Yes, there he is. What actually happened then, Paul? Just bring us up to date, please.
Right, so this is what happened last night, or at least this is what is being reported, and I'll explain the discrepancy in just a minute. We do know that at around about 6:45 last night, a lot of families around here trick-or-treating, cold, dark winter's night, they heard a loud bang. Some people thought it was a bomb, others thought a lorry had crashed into the Fisherton tunnel, which was just behind me. Turns out that one of the trains that was travelling from Portsmouth to Bristol had hit an object on the track, or at least that is what is being reported, that it had hit an object on the track and then derailed, and then a subsequent train travelling from London to Honiton in Devon then hit that train that had derailed. Now 100 people were evacuated from the train. Around about 17 people were injured. Eyewitnesses saying that they were walking wounded. In the last few minutes we've had a statement from Salisbury NHS Foundation Trust, who say that 13 casualties were treated at Salisbury District Hospital. 4 of these casualties were admitted, 1 patient has been discharged and 3 remain as inpatients. We are pleased to report that they are all in a stable condition. Now, we don't know whether that includes the driver. He was one of the people that was taken to hospital. He had to be freed from the wreckage, but it appears that no one seriously injured, and certainly there were no fatalities. So an investigation currently underway. Earlier, I was at Salisbury Station, about a mile away from here, speaking to Network Rail and South West Railways. Neither would confirm that there was an object on the track, neither that the train had hit it. They were merely saying that they were awaiting the outcome of that investigation, which is currently underway.
Gosh, well, Paul, thank you very much for that. And it's really, obviously, a desperately sad situation. We wish everyone well involved, but certainly there needs to be more clarity on that pretty soon for a lot of people, I would imagine. Paul, thank you very much. Paul Hawkins there, reporting from the scene of the Salisbury rail crash. Now, after the break, Spain's bull-running tradition has come under fire after another participant was gored to death. We'll be speaking to an experienced bull runner and former bullfighter about the custom. But before that, here's a look at this morning's news.
Good morning. Let's get you up to date. The Prime Minister is welcoming world leaders to COP26 today, telling them humanity has long since run down the clock on climate change. During his speech, Boris Johnson will say they must act now to tackle the climate crisis. Around 120 heads of state and government are attending the summit. National Rail Inquiries has said that disruption following the train crash in Salisbury, which left several people injured, will continue for several days. Yesterday, a train derailed after hitting an object and then collided with a second train. British Transport Police confirmed there were no fatalities, but a small number of people were taken to hospital. The chief executive of Barclays Bank has announced he's stepping down after an investigation by the financial watchdog into his links with the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The Financial Conduct Authority report makes no findings that Mr Staley saw or was aware of any of Mr Epstein's alleged crimes. Well, Mr Staley says he'll contest the findings. Tottenham Hotspur head coach Nuno Espirito Santo has been sacked after only 4 months in the job. It comes after the club's 3-0 home loss to Manchester United. That's the team's 5th defeat in 10 games this season. We don't know yet who'll replace him. Tottenham says a further coaching update will follow. Families in Australia have been reunited as the first unrestricted flights have arrived in the country. Australia has eased its international border rules for the first time since the start of the pandemic. Australian citizens living abroad can now visit the country without a permit, whilst residents are also free to leave without government permission. You're up to date. I'll have more for you on all of today's top stories at 11 o'clock.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
Hi, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
And we're hosting a show right here on GB News, 9:30am till 12pm, every single weekday, called To The Point.
We're going to be talking about all the big issues that matter to you at home in Britain.
Absolutely, whether it's holding politicians to account, discussing what's taking place in the Channel, banging on about law and order, we're not afraid to do the absolute lot of it.
Yes, and if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we'll be saying it.
Make sure you're here 9:30am till 12pm, every single weekday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
Now, Chancellor Rishi Sunak revealed that cigarettes were facing a tax hike in his budget announced last week, and smokers are understandably furious. The price of a 20-pack is set to soar by up to 88 pence, and the cheapest pack will now cost almost £9.73, while the organisation Forest, which advocates on behalf of smokers, have claimed that this tax hike will unfairly hit the majority of smokers who come from poorer backgrounds at a time when they're already struggling to afford to live.
Yes, so we're going to be talking about this now and about the fact that apparently maybe we're going to end up with massive tax hikes, of course, on our cigarettes. Dr. Rob Branston joins us now, Associate Professor in Business Economics at the University of Bath School of Management. Thank you very, very much for joining us. So where are you on this particular issue then? Do you think we should be taxing the living daylights out of smokers?
Well, good morning. Thank you for having me on. I think it's important to remember that we are dealing here with a deadly product. Cigarettes may be legal, but that is only a result of a historical quirk. Chris Whitty, the Chief Medical Officer, has estimated that in 2020 more people will die from smoking than will have died through COVID-19. So clearly tobacco is a particular problem for society, and there is lots of evidence to show that tobacco taxation is the most effective way of encouraging people not to smoke. So I think it's important that we remember that this is only part of a wider package of measures to encourage people to take healthy decisions. And a healthy decision is not to start smoking or to give up.
That's a concern. I think that phrase, to encourage people to take healthy decisions, right? A lot of people would have a concern about that. What right is it of the government to tell me what I can and can't smoke or what I can and can't eat or price me out of the market for it? You know, I have a right, don't I? And at the end of the day as well, let's say that I die of something smoking related. What about all the fat people clogging up the NHS?
Well, I think it's important to take each issue in isolation. So leaving aside the issue of obesity for a moment, clearly no one is banning you from making the choice to use tobacco if that is your wish. The government simply have a duty to make that decision as informed as it possibly can be. And one of the ways they do that is to put warning labels on packets, for example. But taxation is another way of doing that. If you want to pay the tax, you have every right to go and buy tobacco. But equally, the point of the taxation is to push you towards making more sensible decisions. So you can, for example, take up using e-cigarettes instead of smoking. That is a cheaper product that will still give you the nicotine that you are addicted to. So again, taxation is part of a wider set of carrot and stick measures that are designed to encourage you to make sensible decisions. But it is your right to continue to make the decisions that you as an individual wish to make.
And one of the things that the government, I suppose, might have to consider soon is prescribing e-cigarettes, at least in England, on the National Health Services, the Medicines and Healthcare Regulator. Is basically suggesting that this could be one of the options on the table. That would essentially make all of us have to pay for the fact that people have this smoking habit, because of course we'd be paying the taxes towards the NHS, and then the NHS would be prescribing e-cigarettes. Is that the better way to go? Is that what you're suggesting as well as part of this package of measures?
Well, I think you have to remember that the average smoker will lose 10 years of their life, and something like 2 out of every 3 long-term smokers will die prematurely through their smoking. So it's in our collective interests for individual smokers to give up, because we will then hopefully avoid some of the health costs associated with treating all of the smoking-related illness that is often caused by tobacco consumption. So yes, you are right, if we provide e-cigarettes on the NHS, there will be a cost associated with that. But the point is that cost is likely to be a lot lower than the health costs that would have been paid had individuals continued to smoke. So again, I come back to my previous statement. The whole point of taxation is that we have a package of measures, a carrot and stick system, if you like, that encourages people to move away from smoking, which is in their individual interests, but it's also in the interests of society more broadly. And here I think it's important to remember, sorry if I could just finish.
No, go on.
It's important to remember that tobacco consumption accounts for approximately half of the different life expectancy between the rich and the poor in our society. So actually taxing tobacco is important if we want to address that issue of discrepancies in life expectancy.
I can understand all of that, and that's definitely one side of it. But I think, you know, the idea really that this is a carrot and stick approach, I think, isn't it just deliberately pricing people out of the market? Isn't it the same argument as going, well, actually, if you want to go and stay in a beach hut in the Seychelles, then you can, but if you can't afford it, that's veering people towards Mallorca, isn't it, instead? And so surely this is a similar thing. And are you not concerned that if you're advocating something like this, that the state will go even further on everything else? It's paving the way for authoritarianism, telling us what we can and can't do, taxing people out of things that the government decides that they shouldn't be doing.
Well, tobacco is a unique product. Even when used as directed, even when used in small measure, it does have a negative health consequence. So I think it's important we don't look to generalise too far from tobacco taxation to other products which have a different set of characteristics. You are absolutely right, though. The whole point of this measure is to let price encourage different decision making. Now, we economists talk about this as an incentive to make different decisions. So, yes, the whole point of the taxation is to increase the price in the shops and therefore encourage consumers to make different decisions. And that may be not to start smoking in the first place. That may be not to continue with their existing habits. But the point is, it's about encouraging individuals to move away from this deadly habit.
Okay, all right. Well, look, thank you very, very much for all of that. It's been an interesting discussion and debate. What do you think at home, everybody? GB Views at GB News. Should we be hiking up tax on cigarettes? Is this going to be the first of many tax rises?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. I don't know exactly where I stand on it, but yes, I understand what he's saying about sort of health disparities between poorer and richer people, and smoking is a massive cause of that health disparity. But then, at the same time, on the other end, of course, if you price people out of poor people out of being able to do something which, you know, many people, it's something they enjoy, then you create a disparity of almost the freedom of choice to be able to sort of be able to afford something, which is, I'm not sure, is a better disparity to have. The fact that poorer people then wouldn't be able to afford something they choose to enjoy as free citizens.
We'll be able to tell how much money you earn by whether or not you can smoke a cigarette. But also, it'll just drive a black market, won't it? We'll all be on the old cheap Albanian cigarettes soon. You know, that'll be the way. But anyway, there we go. GB Views at gbnews.uk. Those views have actually been flooding in. So firstly, the government promoted smoking and now say that we shouldn't, even though they know it's more addictive than drugs. Also, people concerned about the potential for the rise of the nanny state, an idea that the government can essentially tell us what's right and wrong. I think clearly we all know smoking's unhealthy. It does tend to have it now on the side of, well, it does have it on the side of every single packet. There's talk of even writing smoking kills on the cigarette so you can watch your life fade away before your very eyes as you have a drag on one of those things. But, you know, do we really need to price people out of it as well? What do you think?
Yeah, let us know. But moving on now to another issue about poorer people in society. Two stories, actually, about the state of Yorkshire's poor council housing have come out this week. The first comes from a woman in Leeds who was forced to dump buckets of her waste from the her 8th floor window after a plumbing issue went ignored for 2 days. The second concerns another woman, a mother of 5 from Sheffield, whose rotten, mouldy and hole-filled flat has gone unrepaired for 7 years, with the council now claiming it's due to COVID, despite the woman complaining since 2004. That's what she's saying. Are these stories unique to Yorkshire, or are they part of a wider problem about the state of our council homes?
Well, we are joined now by housing expert Henry Pryor. Thank you very much, Henry. Is this a common theme, do you think? Do you think that actually up and down the country there are people living in social housing with desperate issues with it who just can't get them fixed?
Tragically, I'm afraid this is an all too familiar story. It's one that we hear day in, day out, week in, week out. The nation's social housing stock has been left, I'm afraid, unattended. And whilst, of course, local authorities, housing associations justifiably can point the finger, as many people can, at COVID and the last 18 months, which has made repairs and getting in to do these kind of works extremely frustrating and difficult. There still, I'm afraid, is a massive backlog, and there are people genuinely in 2021 in the United Kingdom who are living in the equivalent of something that, frankly, Charles Dickens wouldn't have been surprised to see.
Yeah, and that's why when I hear you speak about things like that, which is something we know, I mean, we all know social housing is not in the best condition in many places across the UK, which is why then when I hear the former governor of the Bank of England, Mark Carney, and a lot of his associates say we need to focus the entire financial system towards the green agenda, I say, hang on a minute, we still have many bread and butter issues. People are still suffering today in Britain. What does this make you feel like when all the energy is focused to the green agenda and not people's day-to-day horrors?
Well, frankly, welcome to a very complicated world. We know that we were born into a difficult and frustrating environment, and indeed, we only have to turn on the news in order to be able to see just how complicated it is. But there's no point in greening up the nation's housing stock, or indeed making any sorts of inroads into the social housing issues that we've got if there is no future and there is no tomorrow. So clearly these things have to be developed and have to go along in tandem. And luckily we appear to have enough people to be able to look and concentrate on both, and hopefully to make a difference to both. But the nation's social housing stock is under more pressure than it's ever been in my 38-year career. 1.6 million households on social housing waiting lists up and down the land. They understandably aren't necessarily focused on the big climate agenda. They are much more fixated on their own personal experiences and the sort of stories that you're rightly identifying, picking up the talk of the sort of conditions that people, as I say, the Dickensian conditions that some people are living in, is an embarrassment both to the social housing sector, but also to us as a nation.
Yeah, I'd just like to ask you about something I've always wondered, which is that when we sell off council houses and people buy them and whatever, do we build the same amount of social housing again back? Because I'm just wondering, are we in a situation where population is swelling, let's be honest, and it's not going to stop anytime soon? And are we almost actively reducing our housing stock at the same time?
Well, we have been for 40 or 50 years. It's often suggested that Margaret Thatcher was the person who invented right to buy. It was certainly an initiative that she brought in when she first came to power. But actually, and perhaps somewhat ironically, it's a Labour policy that was exhumed by Mrs. T and brought to the fore. But you're absolutely right. It would seem, wouldn't it, to be crackers, to be selling off the nation's silver, the housing stock that's made available to those less fortunate than perhaps the majority of people, those unable to afford to buy or rent a property. Council houses is what they used to be called or referred to. They're now the nation's social housing stock. And getting on for over 1 million properties now have been sold at a discount to the people who were tenants in those properties. But, and you're absolutely right, the fundamental flaw in the otherwise incredibly cunning plan was that they were not replaced on a one-for-one or like-for-like basis, and were still the receipts that came from those sales to social or council housing tenants was not actually given to local authorities in order to be able to replace these properties, but went back to central government. And the biggest problem we now have is that we haven't been providing new replacement social housing for those that need it on anything like the rate that they've been sold off. And that's why we have this enormous yawning gap between the need of those who are requiring this sort of help and the state's provision to supply them.
Fantastic stuff. Thank you very much, Henry. Cheers for joining us. Henry Pryor there, of course, housing expert, reacting to that story of the devastating conditions, really, that a lot of people are living in. But we're going to move away now and do something a little bit different, aren't we?
Yes, a man has died after being flung into the air and gored to death by a bull at the Spanish running of the Bulls Festival. The bull perforated an artery in the man's thigh and caused a head injury, and the man later died in hospital after hemorrhaging. Public debate over the ethics of bull running has become more heated in recent years, and this is the first bull-related death since COVID restrictions were eased this summer.
Well, sir, it's another excuse to have a lockdown, isn't it? You know, go back into lockdown, no more bull running deaths. But anyway, we are joined now by Alexander Fiske-Harrison, who is an author, journalist, bull runner and former bullfighter. So thank you very much for joining us. Let's start with the bull running then. Why do people do this madness?
I have to say that's the most frequently asked question and the hardest one to answer, because it's not... Well, I guess if you compare it to something like parachute jumping, recreational parachute jumping, that is, it's on a par. You do it at some level for the thrill, but also, especially in Spain, it has a great cultural tradition behind it. And in fact, we used to do bull runs here in England as well. I mean, the Stamford Bull Run in Lincolnshire went on for not far off 1,000 years, I think, until it was banned under Queen Victoria by the old SPCA before it became the RSPCA.
And you must get, you mentioned the RSPCA there, and I was going to ask you, because we are becoming a bit more conscious, well, a lot more conscious in terms of animal rights as a society, not least in this country where we've passed lots of animal rights legislation. Do you feel that eventually bullfighting will have to sort of concede and say that we have essentially been abusing bulls and we are now going to have to just stop the practice because we can no longer justify it morally?
Well, that's a tricky one. I mean, just to separate out, bull running and bullfighting are separate. They're both with the same animal, the Toro Bravo, which is its own, the brave bull, which is its own breed of animal in Spain, which is only bred for this purpose, although it all ends up in the food chain. All bull rings are EU-registered abattoirs. But bull running tends to happen in the morning of the bullfight with the bulls that are fought that evening, especially in Pamplona, the most famous place where they do it, where I run every year up until COVID. Bullfighting has certainly become more controversial and has become arguably less popular, although it's still very popular in Spain and the south of France, where it occurs, and in Latin America. Bull running has exploded in popularity in Spain. Only a few years ago, the figures, which were relatively unofficial, but once they became official under the Ministry of Culture, there was 5,000 bull running events in Spain each year. Last time, before COVID, that they measured it was 15,000. Which is an extraordinary number of people doing it. And in terms of the ethics, there is, of course, an ethical argument against. It doesn't mean it's necessarily the winning argument, because you could mount a very good argument against, well, eating meat or slightly more comparable horse racing, which is fundamentally unnecessary. And the Spanish have horse racing as well, but they have bull running too.
Yeah, OK, look, and also I do understand that there are massive cultural elements to this, and look, I've got to admit, I saw a bullfight once, saw it on the telly. I was very young, I was in Spain, and naturally I was pretty horrified about the whole thing. However, I can imagine that if I had lived there and been brought up around it, I would probably have a different view. Taking all the animal rights issues out of it for a second, what does it actually feel like to fight a bull?
Well, I mean, I did it as research for a book, my book Into the Arena. And it was sort of the last few chapters were about that, because I was covering the whole world of the Spanish bullfight, which is the subtitle of the book. And the matadors who became friends said, how can you write about us unless you've got in the ring? And it was also a way to one-up Hemingway, who'd written so well on it before, because he never did that. And so I did train for the better part of a year. I was out there for 2 years researching the book. And 1 year was entirely devoted to this. And it was terrifying because, of course, it was, I think it's always terrifying from what the matadors tell me, but you get used to it. You know, it's anything you become used to and you become inured to it, and you learn to modulate and moderate your adrenaline levels. But when I did it, I mean, it was just shocking. And one is amazed because you practice bloodlessly on calves, usually female calves, actually, because they're testing them for breeding purposes to see their aggression levels. When a big, I mean, this wasn't even the size of a big bull. This was only a third of a ton. But, you know, it's a totally different animal, and it is terrifying. And in fact, one of the reasons why one runs with bulls is even without the full expertise of a lifetime training as a matador, you can run next to the giant bulls that they fight in Pamplona, where you're going up to, well, maximum 3/4 of a ton, but usually about 2/3 to 1/2 of a ton.
I mean, it does sound fascinating. I know a lot of people might be shouting at their TVs going, how could you do it, how could you do it? But they probably eat steak as well, don't they? Let's be honest with you. Thank you very, very much for your input on that particular issue there. I mean, it's a fascinating one, really, isn't it? I think whether or not we should...
I think a lot of women might say it's just a bit of willy waving, really. It's the last bastion of what some feminists might call toxic masculinity. I think that's what a lot of feminists might call.
I don't know. Maybe a lot of feminists would find that kind of thing very attractive. Anyway, keep all your thoughts coming in to us on email, gbviews@gbnews.uk. We'll be back with more on today's top stories and plenty of your views after the break.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is the Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
Hi, I'm Patrick Christys.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
And we're hosting a show right here on GB News, 9:30 a.m. till 12 p.m. every single weekday, called To The Point.
We're going to be talking about all the big issues that matter to you at home in Britain.
Absolutely, whether it's holding politicians to account, discussing what's taking place in the Channel, banging on about law and order, we're not afraid to do the absolute lot of it.
Yes, and if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we'll be saying it.
Make sure you're here 9:30 a.m. till 12 p.m. every single weekday, right here on GB News for To The Point. Good morning, everybody. You're watching To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christys and Mercy Moroki. We are here all the way through until midday with a show full of today's biggest stories and lots of talking points as well. Make sure that you email in as well with your views, gbviews@gbnews.uk, and we'll be reading those out throughout the show. But first, it's time for the latest news.
Good morning, I'm Rosie Wright. This is your news at 11 o'clock. Now, as the Prime Minister greets world leaders arriving in Glasgow for the COP26 climate summit, Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has scrapped plans to attend, citing security concerns. Boris Johnson's going to address the conference today, telling leaders they must act now, saying humanity has long since run down the clock on climate change. Around 120 heads of state and government are attending the summit, including US President Joe Biden, other European leaders and India's Narendra Modi. They're under pressure to curb global warming to 1.5 degrees. Penny Pizer is from Net Zero Watch. They highlight how climate change policies affect society, and he told GB News the summit won't make a difference.
This is the 26th climate summit. So over the last 30 years, we've heard the same kind of slogans. It's always, last chance saloon. It's the last chance, the last minute, global disaster. It has always been that way. And I think the public are beginning to realize that this is not going to happen.
The Prince of Wales is going to give a military-inspired speech at the conference. He's expected to stress the urgency of action, calling for the world to be on a warlike footing. He'll also ask leaders to engage with global business, saying a vast military-style campaign would utilise their strengths. National Rail Inquiry says disruption following a train crash in Salisbury, which left several people injured. Disruption's going to continue for several days. Yesterday, a train derailed after hitting an object and then collided with a second train. British Transport Police confirmed there were no fatalities, but a small number of people were taken to hospital. The chief executive of Barclays Bank, Jess Stanley, is stepping down from his role after an investigation by the financial watchdog into his links with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Barclays said they were made aware of some of the information into the investigation and were disappointed but didn't provide details. The Financial Conduct Authority report makes no findings that Mr Stanley saw or was aware of any of Mr Epstein's alleged crimes. Well, he said he's going to contest the findings. Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison has denied claims made by the French President Emmanuel Macron that he lied to him over the cancellation of submarine building contract. Australia scrapped a submarine deal with France worth $60 billion as part of a new security alliance with the United States and Britain. The deal will give Australia access to new security measures and nuclear-powered submarines. The French president said Scott Morrison had betrayed France and indicated more needs to be done to rebuild trust between the two allies.
I have a lot of respect and a lot of friendship for your people. I just say when we have respect, you have to be true and you have to behave in line and consistently with this value.
You think he lied to you?
I don't think. I know.
If you've had 2 jabs of the COVID vaccine and they were over 6 months ago, as of today, you don't need an appointment for your booster jab. The third injection is now being offered at walk-in vaccination sites. The NHS is aiming to increase jab uptake ahead of what they've described as a challenging few winter months ahead. NHS England says that more than 6 million people in the UK have already had their booster jab. Tottenham Hotspur head coach Nuno Espirito Santo has been sacked after only 4 months in charge. It comes after the club's 3-0 home loss to Manchester United, which is the team's 5th defeat in 10 games this season. Tottenham has said that a further coaching update will follow in due course. Families in Australia have been reunited after months of travel restrictions as the first unrestricted flights have arrived in the country. Australia's eased its international border rules for the first time since the start of the pandemic. Australian citizens living abroad can now visit the country without the need of a permit, with quarantine restrictions also being eased. Those living in the country are also now free to leave without government permission. The new rules apply to permanent residents, Australian citizens and their immediate families. You're up to date. I'll be back with the latest headlines in half an hour. For now, back to Patrick and Mercy.
Good morning. You're watching To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Moroki, and Patrick Christie's. We've got another hour full of all of today's big stories and lots of discussion and opinion on the issues you care about. So here's what we've got for you for the next hour.
Well, Prime Minister Boris Johnson will warn COP26 can't be a cop-out. As he says, as he starts to stir world leaders into dramatic action ahead of the start of the climate summit. I don't know who writes his speeches. Anyway, we'll bring you the latest from inside and outside the conference live from Glasgow.
Yes, and is our national deradicalisation team. A waste of time. Got there eventually. Well, convicted terrorist and hate preacher Anjem Choudhury seems to think so. He's called it both a waste of time and money. We'll be talking to an anti-extremist expert shortly and asking, is prevent a waste of time?
Yeah, and this story is absolutely bonkers. An MMA mixed-sex fight has been held in Poland, with the male competitor absolutely pummeling his female opponent to the ground. We'll be asking whether or not mixed fights should ever go ahead.
Yes, we have all of that coming up and much more across the programme, so you can get in touch with your views as usual on gbviews@gbnews.uk. But first, Patrick gives his views on the COP26 climate summit.
COP26 is already an absolute shambles. This totally futile meeting of world leaders, which will actually, ironically, act as a mass pollution event, has failed before it's even begun. For starters, the vast majority of the 25,000 delegates and 125 world leaders will have flown there, which will basically have had the same impact on the environment as going to Antarctica with a blowtorch and melting the ice cap while simultaneously kicking a polar bear to death. And then there's the fact that trees on the line prevented trains from Euston getting to Glasgow. So that meant that loads more people either had to fly or drive there. Again, not a great start. Up in Scotland, scooter catastrophe merchant Humza Yousaf has said that there will be an increase in COVID cases as a result of everyone descending into Glasgow. So people will probably die as a result of this, which I think is the opposite of what this event is supposed to achieve, isn't it? In fact, the SNP has decided to cancel hospital and GP appointments as well, in a bid to reduce traffic, apparently, which have already forced into a series of logjam bottlenecks by closing a load of roads so that the VIPs can drive around. Scottish rubbish collectors have also gone on strike, so the streets will be lined with putrid rubbish, slowly rotting away, turning Glasgow into one giant breeding ground for rats. And then there's the fact that Boris Johnson has already admitted defeat. Our dear leader said COP26 most likely won't solve anything and only gave it a 6 out of 10 chance of success. I think that's pretty optimistic, Boris. China, world's largest polluter, in fact, it produces twice as many greenhouse gases as the United States, is not going, neither's Russia. The only way we're going to hit our target of stopping the rise in global temperatures is if everyone gets on board with it. And we know that they aren't. So what's the point of carrying on like this? We need to try another approach, don't we? We should be investing more in green technologies. Shouldn't we invest more in things like flood defences? Shouldn't we be looking at changing the way we build our houses so they're not on things like floodplains, or helping to actually cause flooding by stopping rainwater from being absorbed into the ground? Maybe we have to face facts and put our efforts into dealing with living with the effects of climate change and not pursuing this completely futile and expensive approach. We all need to ask ourselves the question now, are you willing to pay for this current approach? Electric cars, heat pumps, massive tax hikes. There's talk of no domestic flights, for goodness sake. Well, that will knock millions, if not billions, off our economy. People need to be able to get about. It would just lead to people driving anyway, wouldn't it? And I don't recall ever consenting to this. This is literally like Stevie Wonder leading Stevie Wonder towards his bank account, just so he can withdraw all his cash and set fire to it, ironically causing more pollution. Yeah, I just find it absolutely
nice analogy there.
Well, it is really, isn't it? It's the blind leading the blind towards something that, you know, in the end is going to bankrupt us all and probably end up polluting more things. Anyway.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I don't think it's entirely futile because on one hand, yes, obviously we're 1% of global emissions, and unless China and India, for example, you know, massively cut down on their emissions, then we're not going to get very far globally. But at the same time, it does have... A lot of these measures do have an effect in terms of our own environment. That's the reason we have things like ultra-low emission zone. And I actually, quite frankly, do want to live in a cleaner environment. So I can see why certain measures have an impact on us as a country, because it does impact our immediate environment as well. And the other thing I would say is I'm a big David Attenborough fan. I think many people in this country are. And the amount of damage that is done to things like ocean life, the coral reefs, for example, is a real. It's going to be a real effect, and I don't want to lose much of our wonderful landscape or our ecosystems, for example. So I can see where they're going with it. The issue I have with it is the blatant hypocrisy and the speed at which they're trying to make us go net zero by 2050, and the fact that they've admitted we have to make drastic changes to our daily lives, or the poorer people will have to make drastic changes because they'll feel it the most in their pockets. But then that's where the conversation stops. They don't say, well, let's ask how people feel about this, the fact that we're locked in legally to go net 50. Let's ask how people feel about the fact they might need a new car or a new boiler. I don't like the fact that there's the hypocrisy and the zero damns given about how poorer people will feel ultimately.
Yeah, but again, you know, I mean, I'm not a massive polluter, although some would say that the things that come out of my mouth are quite horrific. But no, I'm not a massive polluter. China is, certain people are, various oil companies and all those people are. Why on earth am I having to find the money for an electric car? Why is it my issue? It's not my issue at all, and I'm not willing to. Well, I can't anyway, but I'm not willing to, actually. You know, if we look around at the people who are right at the top of this doing all the damage, they should be the ones who are made to pay. How dare this lot take private jets right around the world 24/7 and then stand up there and tell me that I've got to really, you know, watch my emissions? Well,
Yeah, again, and it goes back to what we were saying about cigarettes. We spoke about this tax on cigarettes not too long ago and how it's going to price out many people from having cigarettes. And we were speaking about whether it's right that only wealthier people might be able to enjoy it. Yeah. And it's the same thing. I mean, even if some of us can afford to go electric, what's obviously going to happen is once the government's implemented that, they're then going to start heavily taxing people who own petrol and diesels until they're forced to go electric, in which case they won't be able to, and then they'll be priced out of driving.
Someone's been in touch, Ian, thank you very much, Ian, to say, in relation to my monologue there, where I said, you know, maybe, you know, this polluting Glasgow in the way that they are is the equivalent of, you know, just going to Antarctica with a blowtorch and kicking a polar bear to death. Turns out there aren't any polar bears in Antarctica. So thank you very much, Ian, for getting in touch with that one. Although the hypocrisy of this lot, maybe they'd fly one over there just so they could fill it in. Anyway, GB Views at gbnews.uk. Well, let's head up to Glasgow now, shall we? Delegates from around 200 countries have descended on the city to announce how they will cut emissions by 2030 and help save the planet.
Yes, French President Emmanuel Macron, Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel have just arrived now, and we've got our eyes all over this conference with our political correspondent Tom Harwood reporting from inside the conference, and Davy Donaldson, our Scotland reporter, covering the atmosphere in Glasgow. So let's catch up with them now. Tom, let's go to you first. Tell us what we're expecting to come out of today.
Well, world leaders have been trickling in to the SEC conference centre here in Glasgow since 8 a.m. And actually, where we are now, right at the heart of the conference, we've seen some people walk around past us. We had Ursula von der Leyen, the President of the European Commission, just next to us a second ago. Sadly, she didn't want to say many words to us. It's a bit of a shame, that. But moving on, there are lots of other people who are arriving and have arrived over the last few hours. This is really the focus point for international international affairs for certainly the next 2 days, which is when all these world leaders from 196 countries, all the registered countries at the UN, are here represented in some form or another. Of course, there are some world leaders who have decided to not come, but their countries are still being represented. I'm thinking of Xi Jinping, the president of China, and of course Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia. Neither are attending, although delegations from their countries are here. The question is, will there be a grand agreement of all of the parties? This is indeed a conference of the parties to those successive agreements, those agreements in previous COPs like Kyoto, like the Paris Agreement. Will there be a Glasgow agreement? Well, it's on a knife edge, and certainly there have been some pre-decided decisions that have already been announced, some announcements that have been in the works for a long time, but there's also negotiation going on here too. And for the next 2 weeks, it's the teams of those countries, not the world leaders themselves necessarily sitting around doing the fine detail work, but their climate teams that are doing those negotiations to try and put meat on the bone of the Paris Agreement, to try and say, yes, it's all very well and good that we've agreed to reduce CO2 emissions, but how are we going to do it? That is a much more complicated question, and one that this conference will attempt to go some way to solve. What Boris Johnson will be saying, and he's speaking in less than an hour now, the Prime Minister will be speaking at midday to announce exactly what's happening, welcome everyone, and kick-start this conference, really. The theme that his government is pushing forward is action on coal, cars, cash and trees to keep warming below 1.5 degrees. It's a handy little rhyme. I'm not sure it's going to alight the country, but hopefully it will stop the world from setting on fire.
Can hope, Tom, or being plummeted underwater, or freezing to death, depending on which one we're going to actually have to happen first. David, I'm going to throw over to you now. You've got the bad gig here. You've got to stand outside, haven't you? What's it like? What's the mood like in the city?
Well, you say bad gig, but I think this is where the most interesting stuff may actually happen. Sorry, Tom, I know you're nice and warm, but certainly I think it's all happening here. We've got police helicopter going above us. As you can see over my shoulder, that's the Glasgow Science Centre. That just shows you how far away I am from the actual action itself. That's due to a police cordon which goes right round the city. And as you can see, I'm quite a distance there. They have even got security here, though. But yeah, I mean, obviously there's a feeling amongst the city that you obviously welcome the world leaders. However, one bad news is the bin strike that's going to be happening this week. The GMB union said that their members didn't get enough time to mull over the offer that was made to them, so there's going to be a bin strike in Glasgow this week, so that's certainly not a good start as far as COP26 is concerned. Later on today, we've got some protesters arriving at Central Station, which I'll be going to have a chat with. That's Red Rebel Rebellion and the Extinction Rebellion, so Red Rebel Brigade rather, and Extinction Rebellion are coming on the train from the southwest of England. So they're obviously coming up to protest here. Police Scotland already made it pretty clear they'll adopt pretty much a zero tolerance policy. If people try to block roads and such, they will be removed. So interesting to see how that unfolds as the day progresses.
Yes, well, 100% it will be, definitely. Tom, can I just quickly get you, if we've still got Tom, have we? Is it true that CNN have accidentally gone to Edinburgh?
Wolf Blitzer, one of the hosts of a CNN programme, is currently sitting outside Edinburgh Castle in a big set, and he's tweeted that 20,000 delegates have turned up here in Edinburgh. It's a very confusing picture because, of course, I think I have seen a couple of CNN people here in Glasgow, so it's not CNN as an organisation, but Wolf Blitzer as an individual seems a little bit lost. But potentially they just couldn't get space. I mean, of course, we have seen how busy Glasgow is. There's a lot of traffic, there's a lot of trouble getting here. The trains have been an absolute nightmare. Many people taking planes instead of trains, given the transport situation yesterday, ironically, for a climate conference. But yes, a very confusing tweet there from one of the most senior journalists at CNN, saying that he was there for the climate conference in completely the wrong city.
Fantastic. You love to see it. Thank you very much, both of you, again. Keep up the good work from Glasgow. Wait, we're in the right place, at least.
Yes, well, after the break, we'll be talking about the heated backlash the MMA are facing after a mixed-sex fight was held in Poland over the weekend that saw a man fighting a woman, basically. But first, let's give you the weather.
Hello again. Another windy day expected today with showers for many, even longer spells of rain in some places. But there will be some sunshine because it is an improving picture as this low moves away. This low brought some very lively weather to some parts of the UK on Sunday. It is now clearing slowly from the northeast of Scotland, but around that we've got tight isobars and some very strong winds, particularly for the north and the east of Scotland. A continued risk of gales in exposed spots here and some heavy rain arriving on those winds into northwest Scotland in particular. Some more prolonged rain also for northwest England moving into the North Midlands, but otherwise it's showers rather than long spells of rain and some sunny spells coming through, particularly in the south and the east. 12 to 13 Celsius here, 9 to 10 further north. And those temperatures falling away overnight with clear skies developing across central, southern and eastern UK, and with lighter winds in the south. A few mist patches forming across parts of southern England in some sheltered spots. Otherwise, showers continue to come into northern and western coastal areas, and it will stay blustery in the north, where temperatures will hold up at 6 or 7 Celsius, 2 or 3 in some sheltered spots in the south. Any mist tending to lift through the morning, and then some decent sunny spells for many during Tuesday morning. I think the cloud will build and showers will soon get going, and those showers will again be most frequent out towards the west and the north. With this cold wind coming in from the north, it's going to feel on the cool side, 10 to 12 Celsius generally. Any showers inland tend to ease on Tuesday, but they will continue across northern and western and perhaps 1 or 2 eastern coasts as well. Inland, plenty of clear skies on Tuesday night and plenty of sunshine to come inland on Wednesday. Coastal areas bearing the brunt of any showers through Wednesday and Thursday. Cloudier skies on Friday.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
Hi, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
And we're hosting a show right here on GB News, 9:30am till 12pm, every single weekday, called To The Point.
We're going to be talking about all the big issues that matter to you at home in Britain.
Absolutely, whether it's holding politicians to account, discussing what's taking place in the Channel, banging on about law and order, we're not afraid to do the absolute lot of it.
Yes, and if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we'll be saying it.
Make sure you're here 9:30am till 12pm, every single weekday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me live from 9 p.m. to midnight every Friday, Saturday and Sunday. Your weekend starts here. My show exists to do 3 things: to inform, to debate and to entertain. Big guests, big stories and big opinions. And I can't do any of it without you. It's lively and it's a little bit funny. So join me from 9 p.m. to midnight every Friday, Saturday and Sunday on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Good morning, everybody. Now, mixed martial arts fans are outraged after a fight took place where a male fighter wrestled his female opponent in a controversial mixed-gender MMA fight in Poland. Viewers described the fight as horrific and absurd and are questioning how it was ever allowed to go ahead. The male fighter actually injured his female rival so badly, the referee was forced to end the fight early.
Yes, well, joining us now is boxing promoter Dennis Hobson. Dennis, thank you very much for joining us. Do you feel a bit sick by all this?
Absolutely, and it'd never take place under my watch. I've been promoting 30 years, the likes of Ricky Hand, Clinton Woods, David Hay, and you know, I'm in the process of developing a smashing stable, men and women. But for me, I'm a purist, and to be honest, it's abuse. It's GBH what's been committed there, and it's not natural. No matter if you believe in all the equal rights and stuff like that, which I am, I think women should get the same sort of opportunities as any men. I've got 3 daughters, but to put a man in with a woman is just not a natural thing. It's not fair. It's barbaric in my eyes, and it's shocking.
Well. So, Dennis, as well, you know, what kind of bloke does it? I mean, you know, I'm not being funny, but there's some serious question marks there about the chap who's decided to take part in this fight, isn't there, as well? I understand it shouldn't have been offered and, you know, you wouldn't want to promote it and all that stuff, but what kind of bloke actually goes through with it?
I won't lie to live with him, put it that way. But it's shocking. It's just, you know, I'm a purist, like I say. I'm old school, and I think men should still open the door for women and things like that. And I bring my kids up that way. Like I say, I've got 3 daughters, and it would never take place. I don't know how it's been allowed. There should be an uproar, and I'm pleased that you're making an issue on it, because you know, we're in a sport that sometimes gets bad press. So who needs this sort of incident and event happening? It's no good. It's not sport. It's barbaric. In a way, it's a legal way of a man beating a woman up, which is barbaric. It's wrong, and people get locked up for such thing.
Yeah, I happen to actually agree with you in terms of I quite like traditional men who do hold the door open and things like that for women. But to flip this on its head as well, I mean, lots of women do call for equality. They say we want to be seen as exactly the same as men. And, you know, this woman has clearly also accepted this challenge and taken on this man. She wasn't forced into doing this. She said, yes, I'd love to do that in front of an audience. And so, in a way, aren't we sort of denying her right to say, yes, fine, I will fight a man?
Wow.
Well, you could say that, but at the end of the day, if she's a fighter will more or less fight anybody. And if somebody said, "Will you fight him?" she's going to feel it as though it's demeaning to renege on something. So, or not even renege, to refuse to fight somebody. So it's an ego thing, whether you're a man or a woman. But it shouldn't be allowed. The people who are organising it shouldn't be allowed it. If for example, if I've got a little flyweight and he's as game as you like, he'll fight anybody. And if a middleweight offers him to fight him, which is like what 3-4 stone heavier, am I going to allow that to happen? No chance. It's not fair. But the kid would still want to fight. Both fighters want to fight each other. It's not fair. That's why we're in a sport with regulations, and I don't know, we're pushing the boundaries too far, equal rights and all that. Yeah, great. And like I say, I've got 3 daughters, and I want them to have equal opportunities. But at the end of the day, a man is born stronger in 99% of the time, stronger than a woman because of genetics and hormones or whatever. I don't know all that. I wasn't as educated as some people, but it's wrong. It shouldn't take place. It's taken place. I hope we make a massive issue of it, because it shouldn't happen again.
Couldn't agree more, to be honest with you. I think it's sickening. And I think that's a really good explanation, actually, because I was wondering, well, I thought maybe it was just the money. Maybe she decided that she needed the money, because then that would remove an element of consent as well, wouldn't it? We don't know what this lady's personal circumstances are. Someone dangles however much cash in front of you and you think, oh, you know, there you go, I'll go and do it. But actually, it's possibly just the fighting spirit. And I think as long as we keep offering this situation to happen, it sounds like it would keep happening.
I mean, and you're right.
I've watched a video of it now, it's disgusting.
I just do really question the kind of man who would be up for this, because I think every man I know, I mean, irrespective of whether they're in MMA or not, every man I know, given the chance to fight a woman, I just don't think they physically could bring themselves to punch a woman in the face. So I really quite question this man's moral character, not going to lie to you.
No, and I don't know, everyone in the arena as well that's watching it. But anyway, that was Dennis Hobson, by the way, boxing promoter, who gave us his fantastic views there about this particular issue. What do you think? GB Views at gbnews.uk. It's certainly a very, very, well, I was going to say it's a very divisive issue. It's not really, is it? I just don't think men should fight women. Anyway,
yeah, and I think I just want to pick up on something Dennis said there, which is, you know, he started saying, you know, men are stronger than women because of, you know, and he said, oh, well, I'm not as clever as some people, so I can't articulate it. And I think it's actually important that people don't feel like they can only speak about their feelings on things unless they're an expert, because actually a lot of this stuff is just intuitive. Like it just feels intuitively, innately wrong for men to be fighting women, and you don't need to have all the scientific data about why men are stronger than women or this, that, and the other. I think it's a legitimate thing to have, a legitimate opinion to have.
Well, I think this video will have been seen millions of times all around the world. And let's just say a 6-year-old child watches this, right, which you could easily do with the internet now, and he watches it, and he goes into school the next day, and he thinks it's OK to start punching girls. This is where we're at with it now, isn't it? And I just can't really see why. I don't think it should be legal, to be honest with you, but anyway. Moving away, a convicted terrorist called the government's Prevent programme a total waste of time. We'll be speaking to Ishmael Lee South, who runs an anti-extremism youth and covert initiative. But before that, a look at this morning's news.
Good morning, I'm Rosie Wright. Let's get you up to date. As the Prime Minister greets world leaders arriving in Glasgow for the COP26 climate summit, Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has scrapped plans to attend, citing security concerns. Boris Johnson will address the conference shortly, telling leaders they must act now to tackle the climate crisis. Around 120 heads of state and government are attending the summit. National rail inquiries say that disruption following last night's train crash in Salisbury will continue for several days. A train derailed after hitting an object and then collided with a second train. That's left several people injured. British Transport Police confirmed there were no fatalities, but a small number of people were taken to hospital. The chief executive of Barclays Bank, Jez Staley, has announced he's stepping down after an investigation by the financial watchdog into his links with the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The Financial Conduct Authority report makes no findings that Mr Staley saw or was aware of any of Mr Epstein's alleged crimes. Mr Staley says he'll contest the findings. Tottenham Hotspur head coach Nuno Espirito Santo has been sacked after only 4 months in charge. Well, it comes after the club's 3-0 home loss to Manchester United. That's the team's 5th defeat in 10 games this season. We don't know yet who'll replace him. Tottenham says a further coaching update will follow. Families in Australia have been reunited as the first unrestricted flights have arrived in the country. Australia has eased its international border rules for the first time since the start of the pandemic. Australian citizens living abroad can now visit the country without a permit, whilst residents are also free to leave without government permission. You are right up to date. I'll be back at 12 o'clock with all on today's main stories. More from Patrick and Mercy after the break.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
Hi, I'm Patrick Christys.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
And we're hosting a show right here on GB News, 9:30 a.m. till 12 p.m. every single weekday, called To The Point.
We're going to be talking about all the big issues that matter to you at home in Britain.
Absolutely, whether it's holding politicians to account, discussing what's taking place in the Channel, banging on about law and order, we're not afraid to do the absolute lot of it.
Yes, and if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we'll be saying it.
Make sure you're here 9:30 a.m. till 12 p.m. every single weekday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
Good morning. Now, many Greater and Southern Western Railway services are cancelled this morning after two trains collided near Salisbury Station last night, and our reporter Paul Hawkins is there for us this morning. Good morning, Paul. You were there at the site for us a bit earlier. I believe you've moved. Just tell us the latest on this story. How did this happen exactly?
Yeah, well, it's an investigation is currently underway, Mercy, so actual facts from the authorities are a little bit hard to come by. What is being widely reported is that at 6:45 last night there was a loud bang. Lots of people out here, families heard that. Some people were out trick-or-treating, thought they'd heard possibly a bomb or a lorry crashing, something like that. What happened was a train travelling from Portsmouth to Bristol had derailed just as it had entered the Fisherton Tunnel, which is just behind me. It had struck an object on the track reportedly, and that is a key word, reportedly. It had hit an object on the track, derailed, then taken out the signalling equipment in the tunnel, and then a train travelling from London Waterloo to Honiton in Devon then hit that train subsequently, and both were lying, well, one train was lying on its side on the tracks, the other at an angle within the tunnel. 100 people were evacuated from the train, 17 were taken to hospital, 13 were treated there, according to Salisbury NHS Foundation Trust. They've confirmed in the past hour or so 4 of these casualties were admitted. 1 patient has been discharged. 3 remain. That's the key bit. 3 remain as inpatients at the moment at the hospital. We don't know whether one of those is the driver. We do know he was taken to hospital initially. He had to be cut from the wreckage. But the people who were evacuated from the train, the passengers, they were described as walking wounded by eyewitnesses. Injuries, it seems, were not serious and there were no fatalities. So really quite remarkable that so many people managed to walk away from that crash. Which was quite a major one, really. 2 large passenger trains colliding within a tunnel, a really key rail route here connecting the south and the west and the south and London here. Something clearly has gone wrong. And the authorities are currently investigating. I spoke to Network Rail earlier today and also South West Railway. Neither were confirming that the train had hit an object on the track. They wouldn't even go that far. So at the moment that is unconfirmed, but that is what is being widely reported, although it is conjecture.
Very much, Paul. It's certainly a very confusing situation as to what's going on at the minute, and you did a very good job of picking our way through it. Thank you very much, Paul Hawkins there. Just giving us the latest from Salisbury now. We've all become used to taking our own carrier bags when we go shopping. I haven't. I don't know, that's an absolute lie. I absolutely haven't. I always mean to, and then I don't.
Yeah.
No, I've got.
You end up with just a bag full of, cupboard full of.
I've got bags full of bags at home.
Yeah.
You know, and alas, not one of them makes it to Sainsbury's with me. But anyway, one store has gone that step further and is encouraging people to bring their own containers to reduce the amount of waste and single-use plastic. Well, Ella's Earth in Knowle, near Solihull, opened earlier this year and is hoping to change the way people shop to help the environment. Our West Midlands reporter Balvinda Sidhu has been there to see what it's all about.
8-year-old Ella is the inspiration behind this general store, which is single-use plastic-free. Her mum Lizzie says it all started when her daughter said she wants to stop using plastic straws.
She was very animated about sea turtles and straws up their noses, and to be honest with you, I didn't pay much attention because I didn't
do anything environmentally friendly apart from putting the recycling in the bin every once in a while. But when I sat down and spoke to her, she was really very passionate about it. So we decided to just make very small, simple changes. And the first one was changing from a plastic straw to a paper straw.
She would buy like things in plastic containers. She would buy me like these little Lego pots that were fully made of plastic, and she would never really look out for what's plastic and what could actually help the environment. But then she like got the message that it was really happening and affecting our world.
So small changes in the home led to the opening of this store. Here you can bring your own empty containers, take what you need without any waste. So I have bought my own. I've got here, I've bought an empty ice cream tub. And I've got a lot of these at home. They're all like takeaway containers, so I bought a few of them. Now, Lizzie, just tell me, just talk me through how it all works.
We would weigh your empty container, and this gives us what's called your tear weight. That's the weight of your empty container. Stick that on there, and then you can go and fill with whatever products you want.
You can get most things here, from fresh fruit, vegetables, frozen pastries and household cleaning products.
We have oils and vinegars, and you can bring your glass bottle or your plastic bottle or whatever you like to refill it.
Lizzie says she was inspired by a similar shop in Birmingham.
There's a very strong community presence in this village. I've lived here most of my life. And it just seemed that if it was something I was interested in doing, maybe somebody else would be interested in it too. And the feedback from the community has been amazing.
I've noticed the recycling, for example, since they've opened and I've been coming in here, the amount of packaging that has gone down in my recycling bin, it's like a third, and it used to be full.
It is more expensive, but you know, for me, that's worth the extra. To be able to get something, you know, is fresh and not be buying something packaged.
Some of our products will be more expensive. The difference with us, I think, is that with what you get with a few more pence is you get a better quality of produce. And also knowing that you are buying from a business that only shops for ethically sourced as well as environmentally friendly products.
Maggie's a local supplier who creates her own skincare products at home using wax and honey from her bees.
We're supporting the bees, so whenever I sell anything, it goes back into looking after our bees. For the environment, my tins are completely environmentally friendly and can be recycled. The products I use are natural.
Ella's Earth has only been open a few months, and Lizzie says she's surprised how quickly people have adapted to a new way of shopping.
The first couple of days that we opened, people were coming in not quite sure what to do. Probably within about 4 days of opening, about 70% of our customers were bringing their own containers. They adopted it much quicker than I thought they would. Definitely not an eco-warrior, I'm just a mom. Really, it's just about supporting my family, supporting my children as they go through their lives.
I'm really happy for my mum because she used to always buy plastic, but now she's trying to look out for everything and she's trying to make sure that we're the best we can be.
Could this be the future of shopping as the race is on to reduce our carbon footprint? Balvinder Sidhu for GB News.
Right. Thank you very much. Construction equipment from firm JCB has signed a £1 billion deal to buy hydrogen made from renewable sources. So the deal was signed with Australian firm Fortescue Future Industries, with JCB agreeing to purchase 10% of the firm's green hydrogen production.
Yes, green hydrogen is created using electricity from renewable sources as opposed to fossil fuels, and it will be used to power JCB's machinery through hydrogen engines. Secretary of State for Business Kwasi Kwarteng says the deal is critical to achieving net zero emissions. Well, joining us now is Professor Miles Allen, who is head of the Climate Dynamics Group at the University of Oxford. Thank you for your time this morning. The UK government has said that the UK's infrastructure and technical know-how makes us ideally positioned to be a global leader in hydrogen. Is this something you believe as well?
Absolutely. It's something we definitely need because we need to decarbonise fossil fuels. I know that sounds a bit odd, but I mean, how can you stop a fossil fuel from causing global warming? Well, the answer is you've got to get rid of the carbon dioxide that's generated when you use that fossil fuel and put it away somewhere safe, not dump it into the atmosphere. And the obvious way to do that is actually to deliver energy to customers in the form of hydrogen, not in the form of petrol or natural gas, which contains carbon, which ends up in the atmosphere when we burn it. So this transition to hydrogen as our highly dense fuel that will allow us to power trucks and ships and potentially planes in the future, things that need a lot of energy in a small space, that's a really important part of the net zero transition.
Well, yes, and obviously, in light of what's going on at COP26 and everything, we need this as soon as possible. What do you think our chances of? Well, Boris Johnson's basically already ruled out the idea that COP26 will work. Essentially, he sort of said that he's only given it a 6 out of 10 chance, right? So we can almost park that idea, can't we? What do you think the chances are of human beings being able to generate a kind of solution, potentially a bit like the one that you're talking about here, before we're all supposed to fry to death?
We could stop fossil fuels from causing global warming within a generation if we just set about doing it sensibly. Unfortunately, 99% of the conversations happening in Glasgow are not about stopping fossil fuels from causing global warming. They're about other things, financing for adaptation, all good things, but not actually the main point. The fossil fuel industry needs to be required to get rid of the carbon dioxide that is generated by the products it sells. It's as simple as that. We didn't save the ozone layer by rationing deodorant or encouraging consumers to use, changing consumer attitudes to body hygiene. I mean, we saved it by requiring the companies that were selling the products that were destroying ozone to fix it. To fix what they were doing. And we could do exactly the same thing for the fossil fuel industry. That would mean, apropos this piece, that they would almost certainly want to deliver their energy in the form of hydrogen and not in the form of natural gas, which is, for example, the way they power our homes at the moment. But that's fine. It's up to them. Let them sort it out. This industry is absolutely capable of stopping global warming, but they're not even being asked to try. That is what is frustrating about COP26.
Do you think there's a lot of, because, what you proposed there, it seems like quite a straightforward, sensible way to go about it.
We can't have that, can we?
Find me a politician who's willing to say, we need the fossil fuel industry to stop causing glable warming.
But why is there so much climate catastrophizing? Why are they? It just seems so convoluted, the entire debate on climate change. Why is that?
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Because they're not doing it. We've spent 30 years going to these annual meetings talking about absolutely anything except how to stop fossil fuels from causing global warming. The fossil fuel industry itself is being actively discouraged from turning up in Glasgow. That's like having a conference on fertiliser use and not inviting the farmers. That's how bonkers it's become. And that's why, I really am concerned about the future, not because I think we can't solve the problem, but because we won't solve the problem. We're not prepared to actually make the industry that's selling the product that's causing the problem fix it. It's as simple as that.
Brilliant. Yes, well, look, thank you very much. I mean, you speak a lot of common sense, and we can't have that getting in the way of politics, can we? But Professor Miles Allen, who's head of the Climate Dynamics Group at the University of Oxford, just discussing potentially a very genuine solution to the climate crisis as opposed to the one that we're pursuing now. But anyway, the Prime Minister's wife, Carrie Johnson, appeared in Rome this week for the G20 summit, sporting a red blazer she's already been seen in this month. The re-wearing of the red blazer, has led some commentators to praise her eco-credentials ahead of the COP26 conference this week.
Well, political commentator and broadcaster Emma Webb joins us now to talk about it. When I read this, I just thought this sounds like the most middle-class analysis I've ever heard in my life. Wearing a blazer, wearing the same piece of item of clothing twice in 1 month, that makes you an eco-warrior. I mean, that's ridiculous. Most people can barely afford to buy new clothes for months and have to wear the same clothes. And repeatedly over the week.
I wear the same suit every single day. I must be an eco lover. So go on, Emma. What do you think?
And she's also being praised for, on a number of occasions, wearing a hired dress. So this dress that she wore yesterday with this red blazer that she'd already worn is apparently from a hire rental company called Her, and it costs £53 to hire, something that many people wouldn't even pay for the dress in the first place. And she's also been seen on previous occasions wearing another fashion brand, a British brand from a company called Cabbages and Roses. She wore at Toy Party Conference, which is a sustainable clothing brand, which apparently, according to the Daily Mail article, cost £360. So these are really not relatable items of clothing for most people. And like you say, people were commenting on this tweet that went viral, 25,000 likes, obviously got a lot of traction because people thought this was so outrageous. People saying that they've been wearing the same fleece for 25 years. I've certainly got coats that I've had since I was probably about 15 years old. I come on GB News all the time wearing the same 3 dresses in cycle, to the point where people start pointing it out. You know, it's completely normal for people to wear their clothes over and over again. And I think many people will think that this, as you say, is sort of, it's middle classing the climate crisis.
And there's a lot of hypocrisy, just generally, whether I feel the government and politicians in general, the political classes, they've always been out of touch with the average man, let's put it that way. But there's an added element, I feel, increasingly, where there's a hypocrisy around everything. They not only don't understand what the normal person is thinking, but there's a massive hypocrisy. I mean, they flew out to, this was pictured at the G20, the G7, one of those. And they'd all flown out over there. I think President Biden had a 20-car motorcade or whatever it was. And then they're lecturing us about green credentials. And it just seems so hypocritical all of a sudden.
Completely. It's the same thing as those enormous concerts that you used to see for poverty that cost an absolute fortune to put on. And I think most normal people will look at that and think that it is wildly hypocritical and wonder about what the carbon footprint of the climate conference actually is. And people like Prince Charles, who I have absolutely no doubt has done a lot of good for the planet over many, many years, sticking his nose into what has now become an extremely political issue. And because of organisations like Extinction Rebellion, like Insulate Britain, this has become enormously divisive. And the appearance of this hypocrisy is only going to make that gulf even greater, particularly when you have figures like Carrie Symonds being praised for wearing a jacket twice in the same month from a company that I might add, Zara, which is not exactly a sustainable fashion brand itself. It is the original fast fashion. I did a little bit of Googling beforehand, and apparently in the 1990s, the phrase was coined by the New York Times specifically to describe the way in which Zara was able to get clothes from design into shops within less than 15 days. So Zara isn't exactly a sustainable fashion brand. I'm sure that it's taking steps in the directions that Carrie would approve of, but fast fashion's business model is one that is inherently harmful to the environment. So, you know, I am certain that Carrie Symonds probably is much greener than I am. I wear the same dresses over and over again. Doesn't mean that I recycle. But I think that, you know, many people will be looking at this and just thinking, this is so unrelatable. This is just not in the same world that I'm living in.
Emma, thank you so much. It's nice to have a healthy dose of common sense to finish the show. Emma Webb there, for my money, probably one of the best political commentators in the biz, racking up what's going on with Carrie's latest wardrobe.
Yeah, and to be fair, she has pushed for a lot of legislation and advocates for a lot of animal rights and environmental things. So I am sure she is genuinely eco-friendly, and it's the G20 summit, not the G7. But they all flew out to Rome, and then now they've all flown back, all in the name of being environmentally friendly, which...
Well, it's not. Well, they're not, are they? That's the point. It's not environmentally friendly. It's very environmentally unfriendly, what's taking place at the moment. And how do you kind of resent the idea that all of this is somehow my fault or your fault or, you know, the vast majority of the public's fault? I've never been on a private jet. Never will be, probably.
Don't do yourself down, eh?
Right, well, I think we've got time just quickly for one view, apparently. I think we're just going to say the COP26 is full of a bunch of hypocrites lecturing us all day long, and that is from Jerry. Thank you very much. Now, apparently, it's time. That's it. We're done here on To The Point for today, but don't go away because the next briefing will take place with Gloria De Piero, so make sure you tune in.
Be back tomorrow.
Hello again. Another windy day expected today with showers for many, even longer spells of rain in some places. But there will be some sunshine because it is an improving picture as this low moves away. This low brought some very lively weather to some parts of the UK on Sunday. It is now clearing slowly from the northeast of Scotland, but around that we've got tight isobars and some very strong winds, particularly for the north and the east of Scotland. A continued risk of gale